Welcome to the next edition of Policy Square. In this edition, we have one of India's foremost policymakers with us. And let's welcome Mr. Vijayasai Reddy, an Honorable Member of Parliament representing the state of Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Reddy is the leader of Parliamentary Party for Vijayasai Congress, which, as we all know, is an important constituent of this parliament, being the fourth largest in strength in this parliament. Mr. Reddy is a well-known parliamentarian, as now in his second term as the chairperson of the Parliamentary Standing Committee of Commerce. A well-known person, a chartered accountant, professional by training, and very well respected in India's trade and commerce faculty. What your message is that while the steps taken are welcome, but as always, the devil is in the details of implementation, and that is where the government must make sure that the schemes that are put in place are not just implemented, but are easy to implement and are implemented in a manner which is investor friendly, so that the usual problems of delays, etc., don't take place. I think that is a clear message, and I think the government will take that to heart. But to come back to one of the earlier points that you had made, that one part is facilitation, etc., but it's important about the infrastructure part, and I believe under your chairpersonship, the committee has also studied the infrastructure bottlenecks and what is required for being a more competitively exporting company by lowering our logistics costs. And you mentioned the national logistics policy. So grateful if you could just lay that out in a little more detail about what can be done about infrastructure that facilitates trade and exports.
There are several aspects, none being less important than other. The life of entrepreneur who has business idea, and to make the business successful. One, access to the cheap finance, as I have already mentioned, and secondly, land acquisition. It's a state subject. And thirdly, availability of labor and laws related to them, and labor laws related to them, and logistics at the place of manufacture and sale in the market, and access to the foreign markets, and access to the government incentives. These are all the 7 aspects which the manufacturer, entrepreneur will keep it in mind when he intends to start a unit, manufacturing unit. We should give credit where it is due. See, BJP government, the central government at present, has done a good job, very good job with the implementation of PLI scheme, as I have told you, and easy credit for MSMEs through the emergency credit and emergency credit line guarantee scheme, that is called ECLGS. This is a scheme. And India's mercantile export in April 2021, let us have a comparative figure. And India's mercantile export in April 2021 to February 2022 was 374.05 billion, an increase of 45.8%. Over 256.55 billion in April 2020 and February 2021. There is a considerable increase in the exports. We are expected to hit, and in fact, Honorable Prime Minister's objective is little higher, but we are expected to hit $400 billion in mercantile exports in this year. The government is focusing on export infrastructure, especially the delayed industrial corridor are to be completed now that it is PM's Gati Shakti. So in that there would be speedy completion of industrial corridors, and the flip flop is that the trade deficit during the same period, while there is a considerable increase in the export, at the same time, while there is a trade deficit during the period, is also widening to 176.07 billion as against 88.99 billion. during the April to February 2020-21, which is definitely a cause of concern. However, our suggestion in this regard, Chinese mercantile exports are $2.5 trillion, whereas we are expected to hit $400 billion, and it is 5 times. Chinese mercantile exports are 5 times higher than our exports. So we must work very hard and encourage the entrepreneurs, increase the domestic production, and make the industry very competitive to compete with China and other countries. And I am very confident that we will be able to achieve it.
Very good to hear, sir, because even if you see a figure of $400 billion, we can be more aspirational, but that also translates to somewhere around 12 to 13% of our GDP, which is a good achievement to do, because economic history tells us that those nations that had a mercantile export of around 15% of GDP are the ones that were able to sustain a consistent rate of growth and overcome their economic weaknesses. So I think so that's a very good marker, no doubt about that. And while the current account deficit may have also registered an issue, but I think as long as we are able to add more value to whatever we are importing and continue to jack up our export figures, I think what the committee under your guidance is thinking is absolutely on the right track. There's no doubt about that. Just to shift track, you're also the representative of your state in Parliament. You're the leader of the Parliamentary Party for Vijayasai Congress, which we all know is one of the large constituents, 4th largest. The budget has just concluded. We've all heard your excellent reply at the end to the Honorable President's address. But what do you think about the general budget in general, and specifically for the state of Andhra Pradesh, which you represent in Parliament?
People of Andhra Pradesh are disappointed with the union budget. In fact, we have described this budget as budget of all style but no substance. Primarily for the reason that the increasing government spending, what the Honorable Finance Minister has been propagating, but very little of it has been allocated to address the pressing needs of the nation. Secondly, Atmanirbhar Bharat of the states have been neglected. I will give you one example. The central government has increased the cess and surcharges on in its gross tax revenues. Out of the total gross tax revenues, cess and surcharges have been increased. What will be the impact of increase in the cess and surcharges? In fact, 15th Finance Commission has recommended that the state share in the central pool of taxes should be to the tune of 41%. If you really see the impact of increase in cess and surcharges, because cess and surcharges collections are not shared with the state governments. So, in reality and in effect, the 41% as recommended by the 15th Finance Commission has been reduced because of the increase in cess and surcharges to 29%. This is the injustice what the central government has been making to the state governments, and demand by the states. And thirdly, the state governments have been demanding that the GST compensation period for it should be increased for another 5 years, and which is going to come to an end in this June or so. So, which has not been considered by the union budget. So, it is very disappointing, and no relief to the common man in so far as tax benefits are concerned. And in fact, the fuel prices, cess on petrol and diesel is all time high, and proceeds are not shared with the states. All major subsidies on food, fertilizers and LPGs were reduced. while cess and surcharges have been increased, on the other hand the subsidies have been reduced. This move is definitely anti-poor and anti-farmer, considered to be anti-poor and anti-farmer. In fact, the people of this country have been requesting the central government to increase the exemption limit for income tax. For the last 8 years, even though there is a cumulative inflation of for the period has reached to 48%, there is no exemption limit that has been increased. While inflation is going up, on the other hand, government is not considering the increase in the exemption limit, particularly for Andhra Pradesh. It is a big disappointment. We have been continuously and constantly pursuing with the central government for the special category status as promised by the erstwhile Prime Minister, which the present government is not conceding, and most of the statutory obligation under the AP Reorganization Act have not been met by the central government, and union government has not kept some of the promises. For example, resource gap funding. There was when state was unscientifically bifurcated, there was a resource gap, which the central government has promised that it would meet the resource gap funding. And even today, even after considerable lapse of time, central government is not considering it. And there are so many other issues in which the Reorganization Act has stipulated that central government would implement them, and they are not implemented. And therefore, the people of Andhra Pradesh are highly disappointed with the union budget that has been presented now.
I am sure, sir, that as Andhra's representative and also the leader of the fourth largest bloc in Parliament, the government and the authorities will factor in your views. You also mentioned that the government has taken some good steps in terms of PLI, in terms of ease of doing business and moving forward on that dimensions. And Andhra is a young state in that sense. I mean, of course, it's one of the historical states, but after the reorganization, it's still in its nascent years. How do you think, and what would you advise the government of Andhra Pradesh to leverage these platforms that the government of India has created, the policies of PLI, ease of doing business, etc., for the advancement and economic development of Andhra Pradesh itself?
Andhra is ranked number 1 in ease of doing business. Business Reform Action Plan 2019 contains 80 reforms, 187 action points, and to be implemented by 19 state departments. And Andhra Pradesh has achieved 100% compliance in that. AP has made rapid strides in manufacturing, development of ports, multi-modal logistic parks, industrial corridors, and fishing harbors. There is a lot of scope for the development of infrastructural projects, and Andhra Pradesh government is trying to implementing them, envisaging and implementing them also. In fact, our late Industries Minister, Mekapati Gautam Reddy, has showcased Andhra Pradesh in Dubai Expo, and he has facilitated launch of single window system, and where all the permissions are granted for starting the industries, and his efforts led to the investment of 5,150 crores to generate 3,440 direct employment and 7,800 indirect employment in the key sectors of EVs, FMCG, infrastructure, manufacturing logistics, and smart city solutions. Andhra Pradesh government is a responsive government, and it cooperates with the entrepreneurs in acquiring the land and making the logistics available, and less regulatory and regulatory compliances are done immediately and instantaneously. And topographically, Andhra Pradesh has got a wide coast range of 970 kilometers of coastline, and we have plenty of land available right in the middle of three cities, one side Hyderabad, one side Chennai, and other side Bangalore, and in between three state capitals this Andhra Pradesh is located, and more so it's a strategic location for any entrepreneurs to start a manufacturing unit, or whether it is a service sector or manufacturing sector, entrepreneurs are invited, and we have skilled, more so we have skilled manpower in Andhra Pradesh.
Sir, I'm sure that Andhra has a wonderful future ahead of it. It has articulate and experienced leaders like you representing and pushing the case. Sons and daughters of Andhra had global corporations all across the world, so I'm sure as the state goes forward, it has a bright future ahead of it. You raise the right markers, both at the national level and in your capacity as chairperson of the Parliamentary Standing Committee of Commerce, and also for the state itself, and how to move forward on that. But before we end, sir, on a personal note, you are an articulate professional, well-known chartered accountant. You've been on the board of directors of large corporations, Oriental Bank of Commerce and others. How do you see this journey? And if you look back, how would you sort of think of this time gone by and the future coming, and your personal thoughts around that?
India is definitely a fascinating country. A country where a tea vendor can become prime minister. So I don't think in any other country in democracy this is possible. I have also come from a humble background, and the road till now has not been so easy, faced so many hurdles, facing so many cases also, politically motivated cases. Reaching at this point is not important. What we do after we reach here at this place is important for the people of Andhra Pradesh as well as for the people of the country. And I have raised so many problems that are being faced by the people of Andhra Pradesh and the state of Andhra Pradesh, and also the problems that are being faced by the India at the national stage, and problems of the country at large. Particularly, I'll give one example, and I have received representations saying that human hair, which is available in India in plenty, in the raw form, is being smuggled, and thereby 8 lakh people have lost the jobs. And I have taken up this in this committee meeting, and recommended to the government of India that raw hair, human hair, should not be smuggled or exported. Only processed hair, after making them into wigs, only can be exported. Thereby 8 lakh employment is being generated, and huge saving of foreign exchange. On the other hand, contrary, we will be getting huge foreign exchange inflow also to the country. And my message, humble message to the new generation, which is going to presently the students and then youngsters who are likely to lead the nation in future, is to adopt a quote of Swami Vivekananda. The quote is, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is achieved."
So thank you so much for your very motivating and invigorating words. I think our viewers and listeners will take forward your message, learn from the past, be situated in the present, and then work hard to make work for a glorious future. We thank you for your time today, sir, and wish you the very best in your future endeavors. Thank you, sir.